Was a freezing winter morning in Chicago. The wind howled between the tall buildings, snow covered the streets, and people hurried past, wrapped in thick coats and scarves. On the corner of Jefferson Street sat a boy, barely 12 years old. His name was Ethan Miller. His cheeks were red from the cold, his shoes were torn, and his little hands were raw as he held a cardboard sign. "Hungry! Please help!" People walked by, glancing at him for a second before turning away. Some shook their heads, some pitied him silently, but no one stopped. Ethan hadn't eaten in 2 days. His stomach growled, his head felt dizzy, but his eyes still searched for hope. Across the street, a small bakery named Olivia's Bread and Pastry filled the air with the smell of fresh bread. Ethan closed his eyes, breathing in deeply, imagining biting into one of those soft, warm loaves. Finally, gathering courage, he stepped inside. The little bell above the bakery door jingled. Inside, the bakery was warm and bright. Behind the counter stood Olivia Harper, a woman in her mid-30s, with brown hair tied in a bun and flour on her apron. She was busy arranging loaves of sourdough. Ethan hesitated, then whispered, "Excuse me, ma'am." Olivia looked up. She saw a skinny boy shivering, holding his torn jacket tightly around himself. "Yes, sweetheart?" she asked gently. Could you give me some bread?" Ethan asked nervously. "I don't have money. But I promise, someday I'll pay you back." Olivia's heart softened instantly. Most people would have kicked him out, but she saw sincerity in his eyes. She picked up a warm loaf of bread and placed it in his hands. "Here, eat. You don't have to pay me back." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. He clutched the bread, whispering, Thank you so much." He stepped outside, sat on the curb, and ate hungrily, savoring every bite. What he didn't know was that this small act of kindness would change his life forever. As Ethan ate, a tall man in a dark coat watched from across the street. His name was Richard Bennett, a wealthy real estate businessman known for being cold-hearted. He had passed Ethan earlier but ignored him, just like everyone else. But now, seeing Olivia give bread to the boy without hesitation, something stirred inside him. Richard had once been poor himself, though he buried that memory deep. Seeing the boy reminded him of his own childhood, when his mother struggled to feed him after his father abandoned the family. Richard crossed the street and entered the bakery. "Did you just give that boy bread for free?" he asked Olivia. Olivia wiped her hands on her apron. "Yes, I did. He was starving. Would you have let him go hungry?" Richard raised an eyebrow. "Business doesn't survive on charity." Olivia smiled softly. "Maybe not. But humanity does." Richard said nothing, but those words echoed in his mind. Days passed. Ethan returned to the bakery every now and then, sometimes just to thank Olivia, sometimes to ask for small chores in exchange for food. He swept the floor, carried flour bags, and washed trays. One evening, Olivia asked, "Where are your parents, Ethan?" Ethan lowered his head. "My mom, she died last year. My dad left us long ago. I live in a shelter, but sometimes there's not enough food." Olivia's heart broke. She patted his shoulder. "From now on, whenever you're hungry, you come here. You're not alone anymore." Ethan smiled for the first time in months. What neither of them knew was that Richard had been watching. He often passed by the bakery, sometimes stopping inside for coffee, pretending it was just coincidence. But in truth, he was drawn to the boy, and to Olivia's kindness. One snowy night, as Olivia was closing the bakery, Ethan helped her stack trays. Suddenly, 2 young men barged in. They wore hoodies, and one of them held a knife. "Empty the register," one demanded. Olivia froze. Ethan's heart raced. But before Olivia could move, Ethan stepped forward. "Please don't hurt her. Take me instead." The robbers laughed. "Kid, move!" Just then, a deep voice thundered, "Police are on the way." Everyone turned. At the door stood Richard Bennett, his phone in hand. The robbers panicked and ran off into the night. Olivia collapsed into a chair, trembling. Ethan hugged her tightly. Richard stepped closer. "Are you both okay?" Olivia nodded weakly. "Thank you, if you hadn't shown up." Richard interrupted. "No. Thank the boy. He was ready to protect you." He looked at Ethan, admiration in his eyes. For the first time, Richard felt something change inside him. The next morning, Richard returned to the bakery. He looked serious. "Olivia," he began, "I've been watching this boy. He's brave, honest, and kind. I want to take responsibility for him." Olivia frowned. "What do you mean?" Richard knelt in front of Ethan. "Ethan, would you like to come live with me? I can give you a home, good clothes, and education. You won't have to beg ever again." Ethan's eyes widened. He glanced at Olivia, unsure. Olivia smiled warmly. "It's your choice, Ethan. Whatever you decide, I'll always be here for you." Ethan thought for a moment. He remembered the cold streets, the empty stomach, and the endless loneliness. Then he looked at Richard's eyes, stern, but sincere. "Yes," Ethan whispered. "I'll come." Richard placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. "Then from today, your family." Ethan's life transformed overnight. Richard took him to his mansion on the outskirts of Chicago. For the first time, Ethan slept in a warm bed, wore new clothes, and ate until his stomach was full. But Richard wasn't just giving charity. He made Ethan study, taught him discipline, and trained him in business. Years passed. Ethan grew into a strong, intelligent young man. He excelled in school, then in college, always carrying with him the memory of that one loaf of bread. Through it all, he never forgot Olivia. Every weekend, he visited her bakery, helping her run the shop. She became like a second mother to him. And Richard? The cold businessman who once ignored beggars became a changed man, because one boy reminded him of his own forgotten humanity. 15 years later, the city was buzzing with news. Ethan Miller Bennett, a young philanthropist, had just opened a foundation to help homeless children across America. At the grand opening ceremony, reporters asked him, "What inspired you to start this foundation?" Ethan smiled, his eyes misty. "Years ago, I was a starving boy on the streets. A kind baker gave me bread without asking for anything in return. That bread gave me not just life, but hope. Today, I want to give the same hope to every child who feels forgotten." The crowd applauded. Olivia, now older but still running her bakery, sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face. Richard, standing beside Ethan, felt proud beyond words. Ethan turned to the audience. "Never underestimate a small act of kindness. Sometimes, one loaf of bread can change the world." That single loaf of bread created a chain reaction of kindness, transforming not only Ethan's life but also Richard's heart. Because in the end, it's true, a stranger's kindness can become the seed of a lifetime of miracles.